regime this morning?
Well, I think this is something that he's got to reflect on. I haven't actually read the report. I've just seen the odd tweet from reporters who sort of picked on the highlights. So I will need to read the report. My own concern is that people talk about not impugning the integrity of the committee as if they were a college of cardinals. I mean, I attended the investigation when they were interviewing Boris Johnson, and I was very disappointed to see that the committee, which after all was sitting in a quasi-judicial role, was in fact behaving in a way, some of them anyway, a number of the committee behaved with complete dignity, but a number of them, however, would have been told off if it were a court of law by the judge. They were pulling faces, they were looking skywards, they were nodding with disagreement. This is not the way to conduct a formal inquiry.
Does that diminish the validity of the report in your view?
Well, justice has to be seen to be done, and on that occasion, at least, it wasn't seen to be done. Now, having said all that, I haven't read the report yet. I haven't actually seen the report. I've got to collect it. So until I actually read it, I'm not going to make a judgment on the report.
Are you open-minded? Are you open-minded?
Sorry, Stig, if I could just correct you, by the way, the longest term that anyone would have been banned from Parliament was actually John Bercow. For his bullying, and the report said, and I certainly agreed with them on that occasion, that he would be banned for life if he had still been sitting as an MP. Just wanted to get that little record straight.
The question of how this committee has been constituted is an interesting one, because it was the majority of Parliament agreed with it. It had a majority Conservative membership. It's going to be voted on openly in Parliament. So whether or not this is a quasi-judicial process, this is a parliamentary process of impeccable credentials. Would you accept that, do you think?
I don't know about the impeccable credentials. I say we're going back to the do not impugn the committee, they are above holy. And that isn't actually the case. I mean, they were appointed, by the way, quite legitimately, long before the Boris inquiry began. The Privileges Committee sits on other things too. And generally speaking, I agree with most of their findings. Whether I agree with these findings, as I say, really depends on the content of the report, and I haven't seen it yet.
But do you have an open mind, Michael Fabricant, that if you read the report, you could conclude at the end of it yourself that Boris Johnson is a liar?
I have an open mind on everything. My own view at the moment, not having seen the report, is that I believe that he did not willingly intend to mislead Parliament, that he actually had been advised that he had been behaving within the rules. But we shall see. And of course, don't forget, yesterday we find that one of the members of the committee, it's been alleged by the Guido Fawkes website, was also behaving in the way which the committee has condemned, i.e. involved in a party during lockdown. So, this idea, do not impugn the integrity of this committee, is really a bit reasonable.
Before you go, Michael Fabricant, does this tarnish the honour that you did get from Boris Johnson as he left? He offered you an honour. Does that impugn that process at all?
Well, look, I would say this. I've been a Member of Parliament for Lichfield for 31 years. I've been on the front bench for about 7 or 8 years. I helped save the National Memorial Arboretum from insolvency because of a tax issue. I moved HS2 from a suburb of...
So you deserve it. You deserve to be knighted.
Well, you might say that. I couldn't possibly.
You do the change, you'll thank me later. Your life is good, boy, will make it even greater. See me play on my job, bring to me now. For you to be me, and me to be me. If you can dream it, then you can be it. You are me, I'll be me.
It was undoubtedly a contempt when he released details about their report when he had received them in confidence so that he could respond to them. That's just another contempt by Mr. Johnson. He is just plays fast and loose with anything which he doesn't wish to be constrained by. And I think that's what comes out of this report. I've obviously only had time to read the summary in the time available since it was published, but it's completely damning. I thought the most damning thing was when he stood up in the House of Commons and said that he'd been given assurances that the rules had been followed at Number 10, and he'd been specifically told by his civil servants that was an assurance he couldn't give.
Excuse me, let's share with our viewers some of the things that he has said. In a 3-page report, he released a lengthy statement. The key excerpts. The committee now says that I deliberately misled the House, and at the moment I spoke, I was consciously concealing from the House my knowledge of illicit events. This is rubbish. It is a lie. In order to reach this deranged conclusion, the committee is obliged to say a series of things that are patently absurd or contradicted by the facts. He went on to say about the committee's decision that their argument can be boiled down to, look at this picture, that's Boris Johnson with a glass in his hand. He must have known that the event was illegal, therefore he lied. That is a load of complete tripe. That picture was me in my place of work trying to encourage and thank my officials in a way that I believed was crucial for the government and for the country as a whole, and in a way which I believe to be wholly within the rules. He ends by saying this. This report is a charade. I was wrong to believe in the committee or its good faith. The terrible truth is that it is not I who has twisted the truth to suit my purposes. It is Harriet Harman and her committee. This is a dreadful day for MPs and for democracy. This decision means that no MP is free from vendetta or expulsion on trumped-up charges by a tiny minority who want to see him or her gone from the Commons. What's on that?
Well, it is a dreadful day to see a Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, attacking Parliament when previously he said that the sovereignty of Parliament and Parliament as an institution was so important to him. And that's what I find extraordinary with Mr. Johnson. Everything is fine, everything is important until he decides it isn't. The truth is, this committee on the evidence has done its very best to look at the evidence of Mr. Johnson's misdoing, and frankly, the evidence against Mr. Johnson as Prime Minister is overwhelming over Partygate, that he misled the House. The issue was never, did he have parties? That's one thing. The issue is, did he mislead the House of Commons in answering questions at the dispatch box in a manner that was going to that brought him into the contempt? And it's absolutely abundantly clear that that happened. And as I say, it's not just a difference of interpretation of was I standing up holding the glass at an event which I didn't think was a party but I thought was a work event. It's the fact that the committee's been able to establish that when he came to the dispatch box, he made statements which he knew were disagreed with by his own officials, who had said, well, you can't say that. I think that for me, that's one of the most damning aspects of this report. But overall, Mr. Johnson just chucks up smoke screens in all directions. So as I say, here's somebody who says Parliament is really important. After all, it was the centrepiece of his Brexit, wasn't it? Parliament sovereignty must be restored. But when actually the House of Commons exercises its sovereign right to discipline and to investigate a member of Parliament who might be in contempt, and it's all complete rubbish.
He says it's a vendetta against him. He says that he was rallying the troops. He had a glass in his hand because he was raising a glass to in support of those that have been working tirelessly through the pandemic. And in addition to that, he says, look at what the Metropolitan Police said. You know, they did find me guilty on one case that was a piece of birthday cake at the start of the meeting. Looking at some of the pictures as we're talking to you that have actually been highlighted in the report.
But the point is, did he mislead the House of Commons? As to his motivation when he turned up to these meetings, I'm not in a position to comment, although I have to say some of the meetings look rather like parties when you look at the photographs. They don't really look like work events. But even assuming that, he was put on the spot and asked at the House of Commons dispatch box what was going on. And what he replied included quite deliberate lies. You can't just brush that under the carpet. Ministers are supposed to give honest accounts to the House of Commons on facts, and he didn't do it.
What do you make of him swiping at members of the committee, including Bill Jenkins and indeed the chairman of the committee?
It seems to me to be all of a piece with the way Mr. Johnson behaves. This committee is the mechanism, it's the only mechanism constitutionally by which the House of Commons can protect its privileges and enforce the standards it expects from MPs towards them. That's what we have. And yet suddenly, Mr. Johnson just thinks that this is something which he can criticise. There isn't a shred of evidence that this committee has acted in a deliberately biased fashion against him. I served on the Standards and Privileges Committee, and my own experience is that when MPs come through the door to work there, they do it in a completely non-partisan way. And the people he's most critical of are people who in the past were in fact his political allies. And I think that's quite telling, because the idea that they should have a bias against them seems to me to be rather improbable.
I'm just hearing, if you'll indulge me for a second, from the Liberal Democrats. They have been responding, and they've called on Rishi Sunak to strip Boris Johnson of his ex-Prime Minister's allowance following the publication. The former Prime Ministers are entitled to claim up to £115,000 a year to fund office costs for life. They say that is inappropriate and it should be cut by Rishi Sunak. What do you think?
Well, I think one has to think about that. I think I'm going to comment on it. Because ex-Prime Ministers are entitled to the allowance, and he is an ex-Prime Minister. But I have to say, his overall behaviour in the course of the last week, as I say, breaking the confidence of the committee by partly releasing their findings in a way that you could spin to his best advantage, and now the serial attack on members of the committee does raise a whole series of issues about his fitness for any form of public role. And so I suppose it's something which Mr. Sunak may wish to consider, but I wouldn't want to pronounce on that.
And just a final thought before I let you go, the committee itself making the point that this is unprecedented, that no previous Prime Minister has been found to be deliberately misleading the House.
Yes, it's completely unprecedented, but then Mr. Johnson is a completely unprecedented figure. After all, we know that he's a man who is a serial liar. And he lies not only to protect himself, he also lies to smear other people. I've watched it during the course of his career, and he did it when he was Prime Minister. So seeing that he did it so routinely and regularly in a number of other settings doesn't really come as a surprise that he lied through his back teeth about the circumstances relating to breaches of the rules in number 10 Downing Street.
Can he come back from this?
I hope not. I hope he's gone for good. The country is much better off without him.
Okay, good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hummus in a hurry. Speedy feast delivered on Uber Eats.
In the southwest of Turkey, tucked away in a bay near Bodrum, lies a super yacht. Almost 80 meters long, the Titan sails under the flag of Bermuda, but it belongs to a Russian oligarch, Alexander Abramov, the King of Steel. He is one of a dozen Kremlin confidants who have brought their yachts here since Russia launched its war on Ukraine, to avoid international sanctions. Local journalist Yasser Anta tracks down some of the world's most luxurious yachts. To capture his subjects on film, he no longer needs to leave his corner of the Mediterranean.
If Russian billionaires are coming here, it's because Turkey doesn't want to get involved in the war between Ukraine and Russia. So in March, April, the first yachts started coming and anchoring in the area.